Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Global Reality. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. This is Thursday, November 29th, 2018. I am your host, and I thank you for joining me for another edition of the broadcast. It's great to be back with you here. I've been unable to broadcast or do any shows for the past several weeks. I think the last thing I did was the Bohemian Rhapsody film thing. So I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be back with you again. I've been unable to broadcast for the past few weeks because of problems with the equipment issues. And, I just didn't want to. The thing of it is, I'm busy. I've been busy trying to finish this film. I have lost some productivity this month and gotten behind again due to these issues and various other issues. I could have very easily, and there's probably some of you out there saying, well, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you say something? We could have tried to help you. And, honestly, with all the bullshit that I've already fucking dealt with this most recent stuff I've been dealing with the equipment issues and stuff, I just didn't, this has been too much, man, I've got 2 films I'm finishing, and when those are finished, we'll have the box sets coming out that's going to have all my work and stuff in it, and that's its own separate thing to work on and do. But it's also, another expense for you, the listener, and whatever else. So I'll be honest with you, I probably could have been back up on air and been doing more shows a couple of weeks ago had I done a show or, something and asked people to put something on Facebook and alert people to this. The bottom line of it is, I just didn't want to ask anybody to help with that this time. Because, I've had so many issues and problems, and I've asked people to support and contribute and all that, and you guys, in many cases have. So I just couldn't do it. I'd rather be off air and rather try to work towards figuring out the solution and everything. And I've got everything fixed. It's taken me pretty much the whole month. Here we are already at the end of the month. And I'm just now getting this stuff fixed and back up and running again. But that's, but the good news is I'm back up and running again. Here I am. First fucking chance I got to be back up here with you guys, I'm here. So, again, I apologize. That's why I haven't been on there. That's why I haven't done any updates. I've been unable to from a myriad of equipment problems, computer issues. I had mic break. I had to use a different mic to do that Bohemian Rhapsody movie review thing that I did. And it's not the type of microphone. It's the type of microphone that I do to use to do voiceovers and do the radio show and stuff. It's a very specific type of microphone. And it has to be that microphone. Now, granted, I listened back to that Bohemian Rhapsody thing, and probably to your average person, it probably sounds fine and, sounds okay, close enough for horseshoes. But for me, I just didn't like the sound of it. I didn't like the response of it. Like, it's a thing like where you have a certain place you have to be, certain things. It's like condenser versus dynamic mic type thing. Because you use different mics for different situations, depending on what type of thing you're doing. But this specific mic that I use is for specifically for voiceovers and radio and that kind of thing. The only other backup that I have, because you're not going to have a backup one of these mics. I should probably now, but these things are workhorses, man. I had that mic. That microphone has been in service for 9 fucking years. I got that thing in 2009. So every radio show and interview and everything I've done since 2009 has been done on that one microphone. And it kind of had some engineering problems, which I've noticed in the new ones that they fixed to a certain degree. But it had this issue, and that's what happened with mine, where it's got this wire that runs from the microphone, that runs into where the XLR cable runs into. And the way the microphone was designed, and I could even tell, I mean, it's just a bad design. I don't know. You think they'd come up with a better way to do it? It's because it's just basically an exposed wire. And, you know, after 9-10 years of using the same microphone, I mean, it's wear and tear and moving stuff around, stuff gets knocked over. And so it basically just had bit the dust. But Shure microphones, man, they're workhorses, like the Shure SM58 microphone, which is kind of like the handheld version. It's a good one for broadcast too. Those motherfuckers are indestructible. You can throw one of those off the back of a pickup truck 65 miles an hour down the highway, pick it up, take it to a gig, plug it in, the motherfucker will work. It's just unbelievable. Shure microphones take a beat and keep on rolling. But so I had that issue, and then had some various other fucking computer issues that I've been dealing with. That's why I'm so ready to have these films out, so I can start working towards getting a new computer, because I've been running on the same computer I've had since 2011, and it's beat, man. I've done upgrades and everything I could do. I've brought it as far as I can take it, but I've just worked this thing into the fucking ground, making now, I think this will be every fucking movie except the first two that I've ever made were made on this one computer, and it's had enough. It's done. It's fucking done. I can't believe it still runs either. Say what you will about fucking Apple, man. I mean, yeah, they do some bullshit, and yeah, there's some bunch of shit they do I don't like, but goddamn, man, some of these machines will just last fucking forever over how long I've had PCs. I had PCs in the last 2-3 years. So, anyway, long and short of it is, I just didn't want to, we've got all kinds of other fundraising campaigns and things going on, everything else, just to keep the operating costs. That's the most important thing, is just to get keep the operating costs covered. And to be honest with you, I've gotten very little in this month. We've had very few pre-orders of the box sets. You've got about 2 days left to get those in. Now is the time. You want to get that super deluxe box set that are being handmade. There's only 20 of those made. You want to get one of those. Get them now. But as soon as I got all my computer and microphone and all this other fucking hardware issues solved, of course, the first fucking thing I want to do is jump back into the fucking machine and get this movie out. But then I remembered, well, you might want to go fucking tell people what's going on before you jump back into the goddamn whirlwind again. So anyway, that's why I'm here. Again, I apologize. I haven't had any more updates. I'll let you guys wondering what's going on. Many of you emailed me, and I've emailed you back and stuff. So I guess some of you knew what was going on. But yeah, for the most part, that's just what's been holding me back. That's why I've been on radio silence. Can't do shit if your gear doesn't work and you don't have money to operate. You can't do the work. That's just the bottom line, and that's all I want. That really is all I want out of life. I don't want a fucking Bentley or any of that bullshit or a fucking, a mansion. All I want is enough money to do my work, to keep this thing operating, going, to make my films, and to keep everything here. I mean, that's it, but I also want the gear. Got to have good gear. Got to have the gear to work. I'm about due on a full tilt boogie new gear thing soon. But yeah, man, shit goes on. Life goes on. The rest of it goes on. I did that Bohemian Rhapsody movie thing, and after I did it, even though it was an hour and 40 minutes after I did it, I was like, there's There's still a bunch of shit I forgot to bring up in it. The biggest thing for me that I forgot to bring up, I remember just off the top of my head, there's a bunch of stuff, but the one thing I forgot to bring up in that movie review, if you watch that or listen to that, the biggest thing I forgot to bring up was that one of the other many things, as I mentioned in that video, that drove me crazy about that fucking movie was y'all couldn't get Rami Malek some fucking contacts or some shit. That drove me fucking nuts. Freddie didn't have fucking beautiful blue, green fucking eyes. He had dark eyes, man. And they did like they actually had the audacity. Now, it probably would have been okay. Had they not done a full fucking close 5-second shot on Rami Malek's eyes during the Live Aid sequence, it's like you already noticed it. It already drove you crazy. And then they zoom in. It make no sense. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying about that shit. It's bullshit on purpose. All that stuff is done on purpose. And it's, lies front to back, as I told you, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that just drove me fucking nuts. I forgot to mention that in that video. Jesus. I mean, how hard is it? They do that in movies all the time. Would have taken 2 seconds. You could have done it in post. You see what I'm saying? That's the kind of stuff that gets my conspiratorial mind rolling. I mean, give me a fucking break. All this other so-called attention to detail, but you can't even. You could have made them dark brown or whatever. You could have made them dark in post. They've had that technology for years. They could have went in there after they already shot everything and done it. Why didn't they do that? That's why I'm starting to think there was something. I mean, you could speculate and run all day with what you may think the reasons behind it may be. I'm not going to speculate on that because I don't really have any hard proof of anything. But if I had to venture a guess, I think it would have something to do with the much deeper elements that I just talked about during that thing concerning Freddie Mercury's past, the Zoroastrianism thing, how many of these people that have, stuff like they've done in Iraq with the antiquities and the destruction of the ancient sites and the collection of the ancient antiquities concerning a certain time period. And then, as I've talked about many times as well, the real reasons why they want to take over Iran. Iran is one of the last, if not the last, vestige of these ancient artifacts with stuff in there. They don't want the rest of the now much more well-informed public to be able to connect the dots on. And specifically in Iran, because that's where, of course, where the Persian Empire once was, in what is now Iran. And this is where Zoroastrianism came to play. And you've got the giant Behistun inscription there, which I've talked about on the show in the past many, many times, and many shows on the Behistun inscription, multiple shows on the Behistun inscription, and how it relates to, the ancient Sumerian stuff and the Anunnaki stuff and all that. Especially when you've got, it's an unbelievable piece of artwork to be seen in the middle of where it's at, the location of it, what it would have taken to carve this thing, the size of it, what it depicts, which is King Darius, and what the translations talk about, and King Darius being ruling all over all these nations, and his bloodline being the ones to rule all of these nations for eternity. And when you look at all these lands that King Darius's bloodline people are supposed to rule over, it just happens to be all the places in the Middle East where all the wars and everything have and are taking place and are going to take place, and just happens to be where all this oil is located at, just coincidentally enough. He's riding like this winged disc, Virmana-looking thing. It's almost like a culmination of different cultures and religions, from Sumerian to Babylonian, Egyptian. And then if you look below, he's got the fucking apostles below him and stuff. And of course, the families like the Bush family and whatnot, and a lot of these different elite families trace their lineages back to Darius II. And So there's, again, there's all kinds of things I could go all day and all night on this. There's all kinds of stuff, the reasons why, again, just like I talked about the revisionist historical elements of the Bohemian Rhapsody film, but also ties in with the revisionist historical things that the overall world power structure. And you think there's not a connection to that, And I think that's what they banked on. They haven't counted on some crazy motherfucker like me who's studied not only all of this historical stuff for many years, but also has studied the band Queen at the same time for many years. You see what I'm saying? They weren't, really, seriously, they were not counting on some fucking whacknut like me coming along and piecing this stuff together. Nobody in a million years would think there would be a connection between, the war in Iraq and 9/11 and these antiquities and Zoroastrianism in Iran and Freddie Mercury. There's a huge connection. I think Freddie Mercury was some sort of reincarnation of somebody or something, and they knew about it. And that's why they whacked him. And I think to a certain degree, he knew about it. And I think to a certain degree, his family knew about it. Sometime we'll have to put together like the song list. It's crazy. There are hints of this. I've talked about this before, but it's the truth. There are hints of this thing that I'm talking about. There's some sort of, thing with him being having been somebody. Listen, it's no bullshit. It's not a joke. Excuse me. It's not a joke, man. The elite know they have huge amounts of data that we don't have access to, ladies and gentlemen, that pertain specifically to incarnations and people incarnating. They're able to track certain people through different incarnations. And there was that whack movie that came out, was made by the Wachowski sisters. They were the Wachowski siblings for a while. There were the Wachowski brothers first. Then they became the Wachowski siblings because one of them became a woman. Then the other one became a woman too. Now they're the Wachowski sisters. It's fucking, you need a scorecard to keep up with these fucking gender flipping crazies. They made that whack movie, fucking Cloud Atlas. And that was kind of a, much like The Matrix was kind of people's first exposure to some of those ideas and stuff like that. The Cloud Atlas, a lot of people watched that movie and they either really loved it or they watched it and totally hated it. But very few like me, a lot of people couldn't figure it out. I knew what was going on with it from 5 minutes in. I was like, this is just all about different reincarnation, different incarnations, and how people incarnate in different. That's why people couldn't figure out why he had fucking, what's his name? The Mr. Anderson, Agent fucking Smith or whatever his name was. And then like some of the characters of the movie, he's a woman. Some of the characters, that's because, again, because incarnations, that's what that was showing. It wasn't like him just being in drag. What they were trying to make the point of was that people incarnate, your incarnation basically it doesn't have a gender, the gender, it just depends on whatever the next lesson is for the next incarnation that you're coming into. Right. So that's one of the things in that movie. But again, my point of talking about, I'm not even telling you to watch the movie. I don't even think it was a great movie, but what I'm saying is the elite and the people in the real know, they have access and knowledge to people who are incarnate. And I believe that they eradicate certain people at young ages that they know are incarnating that are in the future going to be a problem with them. When you look at a lot of the stuff, I've talked about this, I think it's some of the Lost Secrets of Ancient America films I did, maybe volume 2, with some of the Kennedy assassination stuff. When you look at some of the different alignments, in the alignment to the Deneb portal, in the Deneb star system, and you look at some of these things, and I found these same alignments and whatnot in a lot of the ancient sites that I visited in the Lost Secrets of Ancient America series. And, there is something to that. There is something where it seems like they did Kennedy in the way they did him at that spot in Dealey Plaza in the way that they did it, because it had something to do with this idea that I'm talking about the knowledge of the different incarnations. And I've told this story before about that Guthrie Lodge in Oklahoma that I went to, the Masonic Lodge, and how I totally blew the fucking guy, the Freemason guy that was giving the tour. I totally blew his fucking mind because, on the regular tour, he was talking about, this lodge, it was all designed by a woman, and a woman this, and a woman did all this, and she designed the architecture. And after the tour or whatever, I said, hey, yeah, I'm a little bit confused about something. You said it was a woman that designed all this, and I was like, how did a woman get access to all this sacred knowledge of mathematics and geometry and all this to build this building? Because women are not allowed to be in the craft to learn those things. And I could tell he got real nervous. And so as I was saying this, I was like, it just doesn't make sense. I was like, you guys, I could tell he was getting nervous when I said this. And I said, well, if she designed this building, you guys are Masons, you got to have the blueprints to this place. I'd love to see that. And he goes, we do have the blueprints to this place. They're in the basement. It's not on the tour. Follow me. And he took us, no shit you not, he took us to the fucking basement. And not only did they have the architectural plans, which, by the way, confirms what I'd already known just from what he had said during the tour, that, yes, this building was indeed built with these. And again, that's, like the Rosicrucians. Anytime you look into the Freemason stuff, the Rosicrucian, it's all about transcending the death of the physical body. Just like, remember when I did the Emerald Tablets of Thoth reading years ago? That, I didn't know as much about that as I do now at the time, but that's what it's about. The ability to incarnate at will and willfully incarnate and have knowledge of the incarnations that you're going to take on. And doing this at will and controlling it. And that's exactly the point I was making and what I'd figured out with this woman that had designed this Guthrie Masonic Lodge. They knew something ahead of time about this woman. They knew that this woman was in a previous life probably a high-level Mason, a master Mason, somebody they knew and recognized. And they were able to identify her in her next incarnation, which was as a woman. And somebody in the know recognized that and got her access to the information in this incarnation as a woman that she needed in order to design that building. And that's why it's one of a kind. It's protected. It's even bigger than the White House. It's an unbelievable piece of architecture. If you ever get a chance to go to, it's right outside Oklahoma City. If you ever get a chance, they do tours there. Try to go in the fall or whatever, because they don't have, it's old buildings, no central heater. We went in the summertime, and it was fucking balls hot in there. But it was tolerable, though. Yeah, you can see it, like I've talked about, you can see it in the movie. It's used as like Washington, D.C.'s been used as the Capitol. You can see it in the movie Rain Man. Tom Cruise runs across the street. You can see it in the background. But these people have knowledge of incarnations and across time periods. And I think that there was some sort of like, what is it, like Italians or certain cultures, like spitting at somebody or spitting on somebody. It's like the ultimate insult. It's kind of like that. Or killing somebody and you spit on them after you kill them or whatever. It's like adding it, it's just an additional. That's kind of what the blue-green eye thing on Freddie Mercury, on Rami Malek in that movie kind of felt like to me. Because if you knew you were going to do a tight zoom in on his eyes for like 5 seconds during the Live Aid footage, I just can't see how anybody, unless they were doing it on purpose, wouldn't have gone in, either made him wear contacts or gone in digitally afterward and altered those eyes. Because, no matter, the movie could have even been more factually correct than it was. I could have had no arguments with the factual correctness of this movie, and I still would have had a problem with the fact that they gave him these bright blue eyes. Now, you could get into, I mean, you want to go deep to it, you could get into the whole, the whole Enki thing. You could get into that, and how, I mean, they've, look it up, type blue eyes traced to one ancestor. We've known this in the research community for years. It talks about it in the Sumerian stuff, and we've talked about it in some of the Zechariah Sitchin books I read and stuff in the past, but it talks specifically about Enki, having these blue-green eyes and how his descendants would all have that. And then a couple of years ago, they found through DNA that all people that have blue eyes come from one specific bloodline, from one specific person that originated in Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago. I mean, pretty much identically matching what was written in these ancient Sumerian texts years ago. So that's what got my mind. I mean, when you start looking at that, the Tower of Babel stuff, how these different Anunnakis had dominion over different areas. Like some of them it talks about that. Some of them got this land over here, some of them got this land over here, and then eventually they started having, big dick matches and pissing matches between them, fighting over, because they wanted more lands. They not only wanted their lands, they wanted the lands the homeboy over here got too. So they, what do? They start using humans to fight their wars. And each area had their own cult around that specific deity, and that's where different religions came from. And they would fight in battle and stuff between them. So when you look at the Persian stuff and the lineage of that, where that came from, how it relates back to all that ancient stuff from the ancient Middle East, from the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Akkadians. And you think about the fact that when they did that thing in that movie, it just couldn't have been on accident. You could have fixed that so many ways. Somebody did that because they were trying to send a deeper, darker message about something and add an extra layer of insult that only certain people would know about. And that was confirmed again at the end of that movie, like I talked about with the Zoroastrian stuff. So, it's just unbelievable that there's so much of this stuff that, again, they've gotten away with it this long because there just aren't enough people out there like me who you get, because that's what I've always said, man. You got to research everything. It's the biggest problem I had with the 9/11 Truth Movement, and it's the 100% reason why I got away from it right before I started doing this show, was because they started considering it was like sacrilege to talk about any other topic. And I was trying to tell people, look, if you get bogged down on one topic, that's what they want. It's easy to do that. That's why when I get into a topic, whether it be the CMP or the Lost Secrets of Ancient America stuff, or now this stuff that I've done now with the spellcasters, that's why I go full tilt, all in, all the money, all the chips on the table. I go fucking all in on whatever that topic or subject is for a period of time. Then I move on to something else. But always during that time, I'm always researching other stuff and other things anyway. But the problem is people try to become specialists in one thing to the detriment of learning about many other things. And a lot of this stuff, they've counted on that. I'm telling you, man, that's why that movie was so insulting to me. Listen, if you're not a researcher and you don't know anything about Queen or this, that, and the other, you probably, again, there's millions of people out there that love this movie. It's made a shit ton of money. It's got a shit ton of way too many over-the-top great reviews and great comments. I've got to tell you, tons of fake. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen where, like, if you just even try to say, I didn't really like this movie for no reason, you get jumped all over. So, I've seen a big agenda going on with this movie, and look, hey, it works. I think there must have been some shift or change. Oh, it was just the 27th anniversary of Freddie Mercury's death this month on the 24th. Also, subsequently, people forget this. That exact same day, on November 24th in 1991, the exact same day, Eric Carr, the Fox, the second drummer from the band Kiss, died of heart cancer. Who the fuck gets heart cancer? How many times have you heard of somebody getting heart cancer? It's just bizarre. And died on the same day as Freddie Mercury. But we just had the anniversary of his death, and I think there must have been something that's changed recently with the publishing and the control of the publishing and stuff for the money. Now, I talked about this in that video. When you have a band situation, you have, because that's the biggest thing, and people need to understand is, and I talk about this in the new film as it pertains to the Kurt Cobain, Courtney Love thing. And again, you know, people put all this fucking Courtney's got too much blame and too much credit, you know, all at the same time. But she was not the only one that stood to gain from Kurt's death. The other two members of that band stood to lose greatly had he gotten the chance to do what he wanted to do, which was basically to end the band and go and do something else. And I totally get that. I get why he did it. It sucks. I've seen it happen to plenty of bands. You know, you get a band, they're cool, and they, you know, they attract a certain crowd, and then they get so big that eventually they start attracting the kind of people they didn't want to attract. You know, the football jock types and the meatheads and the fucking whatevers. And that's what happened in Nirvana. You know, the total crowd that he was against, the crowd that he hated, started becoming their crowd because that's how big they got. You couldn't help it. When you get that big, you're going to have, you know, it's going to be beyond just the punk people or the metal people or whatever that like you. When you know, same thing like it happened with Metallica and same thing happened with Queen or any other bands, you know. It goes from being a certain crowd and audience at the beginning, but once it reaches a level of popularity and height, that eventually you get to that point where, you know, it's going to be beyond, and that can't be held. That's just a part of doing it. But those guys stood to lose greatly had he not died. And with Queen, you've got four people that all had equal stake in the business or whatever, but that fourth majority stake vote went to Mary Austin upon the death of Freddie Mercury. And they've never been real specific, but they haven't been necessarily quiet either on their what's the word I'm looking for there? I don't know if the word is disagreement, but I guess there's been some disagreement, or there's been some thing over, well, I mean, and I get that to a certain extent. I mean, it is kind of fucking fucked up to be in a band with four equal people for 20-something years, and then the lead singer dies, and then the next day, overnight, you know, the fourth voting member becomes a woman who's not even a musician, who's not even in a band, who basically, you know, I'm not to downplay Mary Austin's role in Freddie Mercury's life, but basically a lottery winner. You know, if you want to get right down to it, Mary Austin's a fucking lottery winner. She hit the fucking lotto. She got the house. She got most of his money. She got his stake and control in the band. I think something's changed on that front, though. Either the same agreement, because, I mean, Queen music has been licensed and been used and stuff for years in movies and ads and everything else. But if you notice in the past, a lot of the stuff has been more of the stuff that's been written by the other members of the band, not Freddie Mercury. You know, a lot of the stuff that's been licensed in the past, you've had Roger Taylor had his song, I'm in Love with My Car, which was, that was another thing that pissed me off about the movie. I mean, they kept making jokes about I'm in love with my car, which is a great, I like that song. I always like that song. I like Roger singing it and playing drums at the same time. But they had two things in the movie where they were digging at the song I'm in Love with My Car, written by Roger, right? But yet they get to the Live Aid era, and they don't even mention that here's Roger's song, Radio Gaga, which was undoubtedly the pivotal moment of the entire Live Aid performance. But it was also Queen's first bona fide hit since Another One Bites the Dust, like 4 or 5 years before that. So it would have been, I think it would have been cool if they would have done, something like, hey, you jabbed at Roger about fucking, I'm in love with my car. There should have been something around that Live Aid thing, like, hey, just a little props, like, in reference to that. Hey, you didn't like I'm in love with my car, but I just fucking wrote the biggest fucking hit we've had in a long fucking time, and it was the moment at Live Aid that made the whole thing. Because they did that. That's where the hand clapping thing came from. It came from the original video, which was supposed to be a take on the film Fritz Lang's Metropolis. But I think something switched. A lot of these licensing agreements and stuff, or these different type of deals, they change after so long. I've noticed recently there's been, specifically since about the time, since right before this movie has come out and since it's come out, I've noticed all of a sudden there's Queen music being used before that wasn't being used in commercials now. And the majority of the stuff I'm seeing that's being used in commercials now is the Freddie Mercury written stuff. Whereas before, you'd see We Will Rock You, written by Brian, or you might see, you might hear You're My Best Friend. I think that was used from one fast food campaign at some point. That was written by John Deacon. But just in the past 2 weeks, I've seen on television, I think it was a mobile phone commercial that used Flash, the Flash Gordon song from the movie that Queen did, and another one. Oh, God, that I saw tonight. It was some terrible chick singer with the worst. They have all these chick singers that all have these kind of like, I can't even do it. It's like this weird kind of breathy kind of, and there's like, I swear to God, you think it was like one singer. It's not. It's like a million of these female singers that all sound like this. They put them in all these commercials now, and they're horrible. Like that's the only way females sing anymore, is that it drives me nuts, man. You got a billion females out there, great singers with great voices that don't sound like that. But for some reason, when ad campaigns or movies or whatever, I see it in movies too, they get locked into these females or whatever, males too, they have these certain particular voices, just like they did with the all that fucking hee-haw donkey singer bullshit they had, that kind of fucking, not, all that. I am smelling like a rose and somebody gave me on my birthday deathbed. I mean, it's fucking became a joke, dude. Like nobody wanted to hear anybody sing like that again. And now they're doing it with this specific female voice. I don't know. I saw some crazy little thing called Love Ad. It was goddamn blasphemy like I've never heard. But my point is, same as I talked about with the Bohemian Rhapsody soundtrack thing. Freddie Mercury did not want guitar all over that song, and it was a big point of contention with him and Brian. And then what do? Now, for some reason, the movie goes like they go back and re-record the drums, and he puts all the guitar in there. Freddie never wanted it there, and he can't argue with it now. But why didn't they do that previously? You know what I mean? Why did they wait until this movie? Brian and Roger could have done that many years. Freddie's been dead 27 years. They could have went and changed every fucking Queen album they wanted to. If they, what I'm saying? They could have went back and changed drums on stuff or changed guitars on different things. Why did they do it now? Why did they do it specifically with a song that Freddie didn't want it done with? It has to be something to do with a change in the licensing agreements that were different. Because some of these agreements, like there probably was an agreement that was made right when Freddie died, and it probably lasted 25 years or something and then expired. A lot of them were like that. And they have to renegotiate these deals, just like I told you about how a lot of these aging rock stars are doing now, like Dee Snider from Twisted Sister and the Rush guys did it too. That's when I knew Rush was done. But what they do is they sell their catalogs, the rights to their catalogs off to these big companies like Universal Music, and they get a big buyout. But the reason it's a cherry gig is because they don't lose the rights permanently. It's like a lease. Like Universal Music, like leases Rush's, entire catalog. I don't know the details, so I'm just making up details here. But for an example, it would be like, let's say the Universal Music, who now owns Rush's catalog, who they sold to Universal Music individually as band members when after they played their last show in 2015. Dee Snider from Twisted Sister did the same thing. It's basically like a payout. Like you get like $100 million or whatever. Let's just say $100 million. They give you like $100 million each. And then Universal Music licenses your catalog for 8 years. And for 8 years, they can do whatever they want. Now you will still get, there's different royalties. There's performance royalties. There's producer royalties. There's songwriting royalties. All those are separate individual checks and separate individual payments. So they're not necessarily giving up their, the royalties or anything in these deals, but they don't have to share. Universal doesn't have to share in the profits, basically. You know what I'm saying? Like they buy them for a flat. They basically lease the catalog for 8 years for $150 million each, and for that 8-year period, they can do what the fuck they want to do with your music. Don't want to hear, don't want to hear fucking another one by Sedust in a tampon commercial. Too bad. No, don't want to hear fucking Rush Tom Sawyer on a fucking Coke commercial. Too bad. They can do whatever the fuck they want to do to it because they bought the fucking rights and leased it for a certain amount of time. And I think that's what's gone on here recently with the Queen catalog. There's been some kind of change in it that's allowed them to do a bunch of things licensing-wise, changing the music that they weren't able to do for a certain period of time. Something's definitely changed in there. So none of this is a coincidence. And creating this movie to create a phony story and to degrade someone's memory who can't defend themselves after their death, and to also further the agenda. And again, that's why I did that specific video for that. It's even if you don't like the band, you don't care what I have to say about this stuff. Listen, this stuff is just as important as anything else. It ties in. It's unbelievable how many of these things I found in my research just completely unrelated. I'll tell you, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it's fucking great. I watched the first season. I probably watched the first season 5 or 6 times because I just love it that much. I've always been a Mike Judge fan. I've always been a fan of his from the very beginning, from the fucking Beavis and Butthead days. I love all of his, everything he did. I just love all his stuff. I think everything. But his newest thing he's done on Cinemax called Tales from the Tour Bus. He had 1 season last year, and they're in the middle of season 2. Season 1 was country, and it had, old country, not anything new country. Season 1 was like Johnny Paycheck, Jerry Lee Lewis, 2 episodes of George Jones and Tammy Wynette, Billy Joe Shaver, 2 episodes of Waylon Jennings, and then Blaze Bayley. And then this season so far has been funk. They did George Clinton, 2 episodes of Rick James, and 1 episode of Bootsy Collins. And then this Friday, the 5th episode of the season 2 is coming on, and it's James Brown. And in the first episode of season 2, the George Clinton episode, man, I couldn't believe it. Listen, if you're a music fan, it doesn't matter if you don't like, even if you've never heard of or think you don't like any of the artists I just named that are on the show, watch this fucking show. I'm telling you, you don't have to know anything about these artists. You don't have to like it. In fact, that's the angle he's coming from. He even says that at the beginning. Well, you don't like country music, do you? You think it's stupid, this, that, the other. I'm telling you, the stories and the animation, the way they depict these old stories and the stories that the people in it tell, it's unbelievable. It's off the charts. As a music historian, as somebody, it's just unbelievable. My respect level for Mike Judge went through the roof on this because he's telling you there's a lot of truth in this series, y'all. There is a lot of stuff in this series that directly ties in with my spellcaster's work and his films. That if you know where to look for, if you know how to find, you know what to look for, it's in there. That's all I can tell you. If you watch the series watch season 1 first and then start season 2. It's in the middle of it right now. You will see things in there. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. When you watch it, you'll say, oh, that's what Reeves was talking about right there. Okay. And in season 2, this blew me away. Again, you just never know where you're going to find truth at. And oftentimes I find it a lot. And you wouldn't believe how much stuff I find when I'm just trying to have downtime or just trying to have some like, oh, fuck, I've worked on this movie for 18 fucking hours today. I need a break. I need something to watch, you know, something to say. Someone's going to make me laugh. Someone's going to let me turn my brain off for a minute. A friend of mine was like, man, you like some real, he's like, to be into as much deep shit as you're into, you like some real, like, you know, brain dead shit sometimes, you know, Trailer Park Boys and fucking, you know, South Park, whatever. I'm like, dude, I've got to. For me, I've got to get into that. That's the only thing sometimes that keeps me sane. Because I get bogged down in all this heavy shit, man. You know, sometimes you want to turn that heavy shit off and you just want some base level bullshit. So I was getting ready to watch I was anticipating the season 2 of this Tales from the Tour Bus Mike Judge show on Cinemax, and I was so busy dealing with all the shit I've been dealing with the equipment problems and working on the film that even though I was waiting for this fucking thing to start, it started, and I didn't even know it was on. This was like earlier this week, they already had 4 fucking episodes out before I even knew season 2 was on. I was like, holy shit. So went and downloaded it, started on season 1, and, started on episode 1 of season 2, the George Clinton episode. And, man, I couldn't believe it. I've talked about it on the show, and you'll see this in Soulcasters Volume 2, that some of the the stuff I've discovered with Courtney Love's dad and the music industry and LSD and this, you know, basically creating these MK Ultra controlled acid artists that then spawn more and more and more other artists, you know, like a virus. And I probably would have never, in my own research, I certainly had not found this up until this point. And I like George Clinton. I mean, he's a legend. I saw him live in 1994, the P-Funk All-Stars at Lollapalooza. Yeah, I'll never forget. Came out on stage like 2:00 in the afternoon, sun shining, you know. Comes out. George Clinton, you really kind of expect to see at nighttime indoors, you know, with the spaceship and all that. But here he is, 2:00 in the afternoon, in the middle of the fucking summer in Dallas. You know, a bunch of young punkers and alternative people. He's kind of out of his element, but he walks out on stage and he goes, Dallas, Texas, for the next 45 minutes, you can do whatever the fuck you want to do. And right as he said that, I was on like the lawn area. Right as soon as the split second he said, you can do whatever the fuck you want to do. As soon as he said that, a dude right in front of me goes, BAM! And just hit this motherfucker in the jaw as hard as he could. And I always wondered, like, because you could tell everybody's hanging out. I was sitting there wondering, like, was this guy just sitting there, like, stewing on something this dude did to him, like, 4 or 5 years ago, or, like, he fucking broke his fucking Transformer toy when he was a kid or something? And he was just waiting for permission from fucking Uncle George to say, you can do whatever the fuck you want to do. I mean, as soon as he said that, I seen this dude hit this dude in the mouth, and the whole place just broke into a riot. Everybody started fighting. It was the damnest thing I've ever seen. And it really did almost seem, it made me think, like, God damn. That's why some of these people are paranoid about these big rock stars going to these foreign countries with weird governments and stuff and playing these stadium shows. Because, I mean, you know, just like you see Freddie Mercury at Live Aid and the AOs and all that, you have power control. You could very easily, if you were an evil person with evil intent, use that power for evil purposes. Freddie Mercury could have very easily, he had so much power, and I think it was another reason why they were so scared of him. You know, if he would have decided to use his voice for an agenda that was against the world power structure and to use his voice to wake people up, and again, it's there. If you look and you listen and you look deep enough and you dig deep enough into his songs and dig deep enough below the surface, it's there. From the very first album to the very last album. It's there. And so, you could see where this power and this ability could be used. But anyway, they talk about in this Tales from the Tour Bus. I never knew this. I probably would never found this on my own. This blew me away. George Clinton and Parliament and all that stuff. He had a bunch. They were all pretty much the same band. They just had different names. They talk about this film. I always wondered about that. Because like some show, like I'd see like some of the concerts, it would be like just Parliament. Some of them would be just Funkadelic. And then other concerts would be Parliament, Funkadelic. Some of the albums are like that. I'm like, what the fuck? It's all the same group. They just had a bunch of different labels and a bunch of different names. They were test subjects, LSD test subjects at Harvard with Timothy Leary. The entire band. And they talk about how they basically did acid through the entire, like, some of those guys in the band were doing acid for 20, 30 years. George Clinton, I think, said he was doing it in his 50s. But that program run by the Harvard psychologists, they show the Harvard psychologists coming up to George Clinton and the band at one of their gigs. And then taking them and paying them and dosing them with the acid and monitoring what they're doing and everything. And it blew me away. Because I talked specifically about that. That program was 100% MK Ultra. The so-called Harvard psychologists were all actually CIA MK Ultra operators operating on campuses under the guise of being psychologists. That was their CIA cover. And Hank Harrison, Courtney Love's father, was another one of those because he's, quote unquote, a psychologist. And he came out of that same program. I couldn't believe it. Now, of course, they don't come right out and say MK Ultra. They don't come out right and put all those connections for you in that show. But when you already know those connections, I'm sitting there watching going, holy fucking shit. They just told us, beyond any shadow of a doubt, George Clinton and his band were an MK Ultra band. 100%. And, man, the two-part Rick James episode, fantastic stuff. Rick James was a fucking amazing music. He gets lost in the stories of his antics and his bullshit and fucking Johnny Murphy and fucking all that shit. He gets lost in the fucking mix, dude. The guy was a motherfucker. A phenomenal musician, phenomenal guitarist, bass player, producer, arranger. I mean, he made fucking Eddie Murphy a stand-up comedian. He gave him a #1 hit album. I mean, Eddie Murphy. That was all Rick James. He put all that together. Anyway, it's fantastic. There's only like 2 or 3 interviews with Rick James that ever existed, and no documentaries. So, but anyway, that thing with the George Clinton thing I just couldn't believe that. It blew me away. But there's a lot of other stuff that ties in, especially with the cocaine stuff and some of the LSD stuff. You'll see it in all the seasons, man. Just watch all the episodes of that show, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll say because there's stuff in there, and that's my point about Mike Judge. I love the guy. I've always loved him. He is a truther. Yes, he doesn't come out, and he's not very obvious with this stuff. Fucking Idiocracy is probably as far as he's gone. But you can really tell with his Tales from the Tour Bus, he's trying to get some truth out there about things without being overtly obvious that that's what he's doing. And that's why it's a genius. That's why she's keep doing your thing, my Judge. Hey, leave that for folks like me to come and decode it and tell them what it's really about and point them in the direction of your show. But keep doing what you're doing. It's genius work. He's getting some fucking truth out there under the guise of entertainment, and it's flying under the radar, and they're not even realizing he's doing it. It's genius. Genius. So big ups and big props to Mike Judge. Again, you got a couple of days left. Got to get your pre-orders in for the box set, folks. Get your orders in now. If you want to get one of these box sets, this is the time. You won't be able to get one after this if you don't get one ordered now. We also have operating costs coming up due on Saturday. We've got to have $1,000 minimum. More than that would be better, but $1,000 minimum for that, no later than Saturday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. So please Get your contributions in now. I'm back, baby. Sorry I haven't been here, but again, I didn't want to get up here and, I just want to figure this shit out on my own and get all the fucking bullshit worked out, and I'd be back when I'm back, and that's what has indeed happened. I'm glad to be back with you. And I'm working to get this, to get out from the deficit I put myself in for the past couple of weeks. Not being able to be as productive as I wanted to, but I've probably got something about 4 or 5 days, 6 days maybe at the most, work left to do. So, again, so long as we reach our goal on the operating costs and everybody gets their pre-orders in, you'll be seeing Volume 2 sometime in the next 7 to 8 days tops. I love you guys. We'll talk again real soon. I'll be back tomorrow. I love you. Take care.